Persia. The name itself evokes visions of immense palaces gleaming under a desert sun, vast armies stretching across endless horizons, and kings who claimed dominion over the very earth and heavens. The Persian Empire, especially in its Achaemenid form, was not just another ancient civilization. It was the first true world empire, the first to knit together people from dozens of cultures, religions, and languages into a single complex system of governance. Born from the rugged lands of modern-day Iran under the leadership of Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BCE, Persia reshaped the known world, setting patterns of rule and diplomacy that would influence empires for millennia. Through a combination of military prowess, administrative genius, and an almost revolutionary approach to diversity and tolerance, Persia became the beating heart of a civilization that truly spanned the known globe. At its height, the Achaemenid Empire stretched from the banks of the Indus River in the east to the rugged mountains of Thrace in the west, and from the scorching sands of Egypt to the icy shores of the Black Sea. Such reach had never before been achieved. The empire was home to peoples as different as the Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, Medes, Lydians, Jews, Elamites, and many others. Yet it maintained a relatively stable and prosperous order for centuries. Unlike many later conquerors, the Persians often chose not to erase local cultures, but rather to integrate them. Local customs were respected, local religions tolerated, and local elites frequently co-opted into the imperial bureaucracy. This policy of respect and pragmatism helped to knit together a vast and varied empire under a single, cohesive rule, a feat that no power before had managed at such scale. Cyrus the Great, the founder of the empire, is remembered not only for his conquests, but also for his profound statesmanship and benevolence. His conquest of Babylon, for instance, was notable for its restraint and diplomacy. Rather than pillaging the ancient city, Cyrus presented himself as a liberator. He famously issued the Cyrus Cylinder, often regarded as the first declaration of human rights, in which he proclaimed religious freedom and the right for displaced peoples to return to their homelands, including the Jews, who returned to Jerusalem to rebuild their temple. Such acts cemented his reputation not just as a conqueror, but as a wise and just ruler. His legacy was deeply respected even by his enemies. Centuries later, Alexander the Great would pay homage at Cyrus's tomb at Pasargadae, honoring him as a king of kings. Following Cyrus, Darius I, known as Darius the Great, took the empire to even greater heights. Recognizing the need for more sophisticated administration, Darius reorganized the empire into satrapies, provincial governments led by satraps who were closely monitored by royal inspectors, famously called the king's eyes and ears. He instituted standardized coinage, built the royal road to facilitate rapid communication across the empire's vast distances, and initiated grand construction projects like the new ceremonial capital at Persepolis, a breathtaking complex that symbolized the power and cosmopolitan grandeur of Persia. Darius also attempted to expand the empire into Greece, launching the first Persian invasion that culminated in the famous Battle of Marathon. Though repelled, the campaign demonstrated Persia's ambition to dominate even the fractious Greek city-states. Art, architecture, and culture flourished under the Achaemenids. Persian art was a blend of styles from across its empire: Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Anatolian, and more. Yet it evolved into something uniquely Persian. Monumental reliefs at Persepolis show long processions of tribute bearers from every corner of the empire, each depicted in their native dress, carrying the goods of their lands to offer the great king. This visual tapestry of diversity was not just decorative, it was an ideological statement. The world itself came to bow before Persia. The architecture of the empire, too, was monumental and symbolic. Grand audience halls like the Apadana were designed to awe visitors, their massive columns reaching skyward, their walls engraved with scenes of imperial might and unity. Persian gardens, carefully ordered oases of symmetry and beauty would later inspire Islamic garden design and the fabled paradise imagery associated with heaven itself. Religiously, Persia also broke new ground. The dominant faith during the Achaemenid era was Zoroastrianism, founded by the prophet Zoroaster, or Zarathustra. This dualistic faith emphasized the cosmic struggle between Ahura Mazda, the wise and benevolent god, and Angra Mainyu, the spirit of destruction and evil. It taught concepts of free will, moral responsibility, judgment after death, and the eventual triumph of good, ideas that would profoundly influence later Abrahamic religions. Yet despite their own deep religious convictions, the Persian kings were remarkably tolerant. Rather than impose Zoroastrianism, they allowed subject peoples to maintain their own faiths and traditions, whether it be the gods of Babylon or the ancestral deities of Egypt. Persia's military might was legendary, composed of a multi-ethnic force of infantry, cavalry, charioteers, and engineers. The elite corps of Persian soldiers, known as the Immortals, so named because their number was always maintained at exactly 10,000, became symbolic of the empire's indestructibility. Persian generals mastered the logistics of moving and supplying massive armies across immense distances, a necessity for an empire that could require months to traverse. Their naval power, particularly under Darius and his successor Xerxes, also became formidable, with fleets drawn from Phoenician, Egyptian, and Ionian shipwrights and sailors. Nevertheless, the Persian Empire was not invincible. The ambitious but ultimately failed invasions of Greece under Darius and later Xerxes exposed the limitations of Persian power at its frontiers. The empire's vastness, once a source of strength, became a vulnerability. Communications were slow, rebellions could fester before being crushed, and local satraps could grow too powerful. Over time, complacency and court intrigue eroded the central authority. When a young Macedonian king named Alexander the Great stormed into Persian territory in the 4th century BCE, he found an empire weakened by internal strife and overconfidence. Despite fierce resistance, Persia fell, culminating in the burning of Persepolis, a symbolic act of revenge and conquest. Yet even in defeat, Persia's influence endured. Alexander himself adopted many Persian customs, wore Persian dress, and married into Persian nobility, recognizing that the Persian way of empire had much to teach even the greatest conqueror of the age. The fall of the Achaemenids did not mark the end of Persia's grandeur. Successive Persian empires, the Parthians, the Sassanids, and later Islamic Persian dynasties, kept alive the imperial tradition. The Sassanids in particular revived Zoroastrianism, rebuilt Persian prestige, and stood as the principal Eastern rival to Rome and Byzantium for centuries. Persian culture, language, and administrative practices continued to influence the world long after the days of Darius and Xerxes. Even today, echoes of ancient Persia resonate. In language, modern Persian Farsi retains much from its ancient roots. In political philosophy, in art, and in the very idea of a cosmopolitan empire that could unite rather than merely subjugate. Persia's historical significance transcends its imperial might. It was an early model of how vast, diverse populations might live together under a shared administrative and cultural framework. It demonstrated that tolerance and respect for local traditions could coexist with imperial ambition. It showed that wealth and culture could flow across regions, blending together into new and richer forms. And it laid the groundwork for the very concept of the world empire, an entity not merely defined by conquest, but by governance, ideology, and enduring influence. In every stone of Persepolis, in every line of the Cyrus cylinder, and in every story of the immortal Persian warriors, we see the imprint of a civilization that imagined itself as the mirror of the cosmos, orderly, majestic, and vast beyond comprehension. Persia was not merely an empire of its age, it was an empire of the imagination, whose dreams of unity and grandeur have echoed through the corridors of history ever since.